Pokebabs! Hey guys, welcome back to Pokebabs, and today we are going to be looking at a fun little take on Sable Garb, which has been a pretty successful deck in the expanded format. I've had friends that play it and have done really well with it at regional events and such. And so today, though, we're looking at a legacy build of it. And it does change a lot in legacy. And so we're going to take a look at it, see what we've got at our disposal in this format. Now, of course, the main attacker is Sableye. It does have 70 HP, but it's all about this junk hunt attack. For 1 dark energy, put 2 item cards from your discard into your hand. And in expanded, we're usually going to be grabbing back 2 puzzles. But in legacy, we've got a lot of good cards at our disposal as well. Very powerful trainer cards that we can get back. And having no weakness is also nice. Now, I am only playing 3. I probably would play 4, but for some reason, I actually only have 3 online. So I'm only playing 3 in this build. Probably would play 4, though. Otherwise, now the other part of the deck is the Garb part, the Garbodor, Stage 1, 100 HP. Garbotoxin is what is all about. If it has a tool card attached to it, then there's no other abilities besides Garbotoxin. And that's very important. That's very important against a lot of matchups. Now, some other things that we have. Well, so you might think like, well, why would we want to shut down abilities? Don't you have abilities? Well, the only ability we really have is this Dark Cloak from Darkrai-EX. And this could be very useful in the early turns to be able to get free retreat, retain energy, get certain things active like a Smeargle maybe, or be able to get your junk hunt off on turn 1 or 2. But also, Night Spear is still a good attack, especially in Legacy. It does 90 and 30 to a bench. And sometimes in Legacy, you just need to take the knockout. You just need to do damage. Because we don't have some of those other cards at our disposal, like guaranteed energy energy removal, or we don't have the puzzle of time, that type of thing. Every once in a while, you do need to take a knockout. So we do play enough dark that we can Night Spear if we need to. Now I mentioned Smeargle. Fantastic for setup. It's got the portrait ability. It can also get you out of a tight spot when you have like no hand, and then you can portrait. You look at your opponent's hand. If they have a supporter there, you play it. You do actually have to play the supporter if it's there. You choose one and play one. But you could Juniper out of a no card hand. You could grab a Skyla for a dual ball early on. That'd be really good. That type of thing. So Smeargle and portrait, fantastic. We've also and also worthy of note that it is a Poke Power, so it doesn't get shut off by Garbodor, which is really nice. We also have this 1/1 Slowking line. I think this Slowking is really underutilized, but then again, there's not a ton of lock decks in Legacy that people really play, but for lock decks, it's really, really good. It's got, again, a Poke Power, so it doesn't get shut off by Garbodor. Second Sight, and once during your turn, we can look at the top 3 cards of either player's deck and put them back on top of that player's deck in any order. And most of the time, we're going to be looking at our opponent's deck, trying to give them bad draws, especially once we've depleted some of the resources. We know that they don't have we know that they don't have really like energy left, or they're trying to dig for an energy or whatever. They don't have an energy in hand, or they need a tool to retreat, like a Float Stone or something like that, or to do enough damage. We can just make sure they just don't draw it. They just don't draw it. And then every once in a while, you could use it for yourself. If you're in a really sticky situation, you need to top deck something. So you kind of play it like a puzzle of time, a single puzzle of time there. But Second Sight, which is a great ability, or rather Poke Power. We're also playing 2 Bicycle for draw. Bicycle is really, really good in this format because we have things like Junk Arm and Ultra Ball, which can put our hand size down. And then we can bike out of it. Also, if you have like a no-card hand, you can junk hunt for a Bicycle. You don't need a supporter necessarily. You can just Bicycle. And then when you Bicycle, you get to also play a supporter later in your turn. We're also playing 3 Crushing Hammer. Energy Denial is one of the main ways that you win with this deck. And we are only playing 3. I think 3 is enough just because we have Junk Hunt. We have Junk Arm. And most of the time you're not going to play more than 2 in a turn anyway. Oh, we got some prizes there. Most of the time you're not going to play more than 2 in a turn anyway. But so I don't think you need more than 2. So we've also got 2 Dual Ball. Dual Ball is a great setup card. You flip a coin, you flip 2 coins, and for each heads you get a basic Pokemon. So we can get out, Smeargle, Darkrai, Sableye, Slowpoke, Trubbish. All cards we pretty much won out turn 1. Or turn 2 maybe for the Sableye. You can wait a little bit, but other than that, pretty much want at least one of each of them out. Darkrai not as important sometimes, but yeah. And then also, sorry, for energy now, we also have 2 Loss Remover, which just puts a special energy into the Lost Zone, so they can never get the energy back. And that's really, really good, especially with the Plasma decks. They play sometimes only special energy or mostly special energy. You just keep putting their energy in the Lost Zone, and they can't get it back with Thundurus EX or anything like that. And we play 2 of just because there's a fair amount of special energy in Expanded. And then you can basically auto-win against those decks that rely on special energy. Otherwise, you can just discard it, and that's fine. Play 1 Escape Rope, just as one of our switching options. It can kind of act as a pseudo Lysander if they only have 1 Pokemon on the bench, or they have 2 Pokemon that you, all their bench Pokemon are things that you would rather have in the active. Alright, so we're going to go into round 1 against Dark-Y, and we see Psychic, and Psychic, Colorless, and Lightning. Which can't be Night March. Yay! But not 100% sure what this would be. I see a Plasma Coin, so maybe it's like a Speed Lugia deck or something like that. I could see that being the case. We do see Zapdos and Pikachu though, so maybe it's more based around lightning attackers. Okay. Round 1 scoop. So that's okay. We'll get to go back to our deck analysis. We see here. So I was mentioning we have the Escape Rope, but we also, for switching option, have this switch. So just a hard switch can be useful in certain situations. You get poisoned, or someone brings something up, or poisoned, or put to sleep, paralyzed. Someone brings something up you don't want active. Hard switch out of it. Just a 1 of is definitely enough with Junk Arm. I mentioned with Escape Rope, we have a couple other ways to get Pokemon in the active. We play 1 Pokemon Reversal. It's like a Pokemon Catcher, basically. It's the same thing of Pokemon Catcher with the errata. So when you flip a coin, if heads, choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and switch it with your active. So with their active. So yeah, basically like a Lysander, a Pokemon Catcher. You have to flip heads. We can play a couple of them in a turn with Junk Arm though, if necessary. We also play one Pokemon Circulator. Again, this is kind of the same idea as with the Escape Rope, but if someone has just like a huge Pokemon active and you need to move it out of the way so you can do other stuff, or if they have heavy bench sitters, sometimes you can just force them into something else, maybe laser it, put it to sleep, that kind of thing. So it's just another option for moving your opponent's Pokemon around, and it can be really helpful in certain situations. We are playing 3 lasers, Hypnotoxic Laser, and I think 3 is plenty. You don't really need, so in the expanded version, you probably wouldn't play any, but in this, we do actually need to hit, sometimes get knockouts and put your opponent in an awkward situation by playing laser. And so, so we're going to do that, and then sometimes that forces your opponent to start playing more aggressive, burn their resources, dig through the deck, and that's exactly what we want them to do. So, and honestly, every once in a while you do take the game just via 6 prizes. So that can happen in Legacy. So we do have the 3 lasers and 2 Virbank City Gym as our gym of choice. our stadium of choice. I don't think that there's necessarily a much better stadium for this deck in Legacy mode or in Legacy format, but we do have, since we have the lasers, it just seems like a great pair to put pressure on. We do have 4 junk arms, so we can get back any trainer that we want. Trainer, of course, in this format, just meaning items, but still really, really strong card. So we got to play 4 of those. Play 1 random receiver, so we can pretty easily get a supporter whenever we need. We do play a relatively low supporter count, and so as a result, it's good to have something like a random receiver to be able to get through your deck to find a supporter. And pretty much every supporter in the deck is one that you would want to get off random receiver, except for twins if you're not losing. We place 2 Super Rod, mainly because if we have 1 prized, we're in a really bad situation. So we play 2 of them. Also, it's very, very important to make sure that you don't deck out. So playing 2 of those, 1 Tool Scrapper, tool removal, of course, really, really good. People put out Float Stones, people put out Life Dew, people put out Rock Guard, all these things we don't really want to deal with. I guess Rock Guard doesn't really matter, but you know, Silver Bangle and Float Stone specifically are ones you don't want to deal with that often. Maybe G Booster. And then we play 3 Ultra Ball, which should be enough, given that we played the 2 Dual Ball. For Search, and then our supporter count, we have 2 N, 3 Juniper, 2 Professor Oak's New Theory, 1 Skyla, which is good for a setup or getting the specific thing that you need later in the game, and 1 Twins, because most of the time we will be behind in prizes, and we'll be trying to mill our opponent. And if that is the case, we can get any 2 cards out of our deck with Twins. I think just the 1 Twins is enough. We could play more than 1. I think just the 1 is enough, because most of the time you have what you need, and you don't necessarily even want to thin your deck out and grab things out of your deck, but it can be helpful, and you know, when it comes up, it usually is helpful. 2 Float Stone for the Garbodor primarily, also for Slowking, or other things. Once we get Garbodor out, then you have to retreat manually, so might put it on something with 2 retreat cost. And then the 1 Life Dew is our ace spec, which I think is the strongest ace spec for this type of deck for sure. Just denying them prizes over and over and over. We have Junk Arm, we can get back the Life Dew on the turn after we lose it. We can always just Junk Hunt back a Life Dew. So really, really useful there. And then we are playing just 7 Dark Energy, and I think 7 is plenty for this deck. You know, early in the game, you're pretty much trying to dig through your deck really fast, get everything set up, and then once you're set up, you just kind of sit there, deny your opponent energy, put pressure on with lasers, and make sure that you don't deck out yourself by, you know, super rodding back in cards. I think with the 12 Pokemon count and the 7 energy count, you're pretty safe to never really deck out yourself, unless your opponent's playing like Durant. And even still, I think you have a chance against Durant. So, yeah, we'll see how we can do in this tournament. We did already take 1 game, but of course we didn't do anything. And we'll see what happens in round 2 in the next video.